We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Regular Americans are still facing the shocking prices that come with exorbitant food price inflation. But perhaps no other product has suffered such slings and arrows as the noble, simple egg. It's time to ask whether Joe Biden is playing chicken with the U.S. economy. And we're joined by economist and author Andrew Moran, a man who tracks grocery bills like a pro, like no other, I would say, to figure out just what went wrong. So, Andrew, give us the basics on what a roller coaster ride it's been for eggs.
Well, I say it's been an exciting time, I would say.
Some would say an exasperating time.
Well, it could be also exhausting for the average consumer. But yeah, I mean, overall food inflation.
Well, they are quite expensive, as you point out.
So we're going to do a whole 10-minute show on egg puns. For all
Absolutely. Now, let's hear the details. What's happened with the noble egg?
Yeah, well, the egg itself, I mean, that's up 49% over the last year. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average price for a carton of eggs is $3.58. But depending where you are in the country, you could be paying a lot more. In California, for example, the average price is now more than $7. And of course, I mean, if you're paying different, if you're buying different types of eggs, you're buying free range eggs, you're buying name generic brand eggs, you're going to buy pasture raised eggs. So overall, I mean, everything's being hit across the board. Even the powdered eggs, the stuff that you have a carton with that you pour it into the pan, that's also really expensive. So consumers can't even save money by shifting to that type of product.
So, I mean, what's behind the rocketing prices, I guess? And I guess more importantly for the American consumers, is there an egg plateau in sight?
Well, to answer your second question first, some economists or market experts, they say that it's going to be taking at least 3 to 6 months before egg prices moderate. So there are three factors of what's going on with egg prices. First of all, is a high cost of diesel. Farmers, they need all the diesel they can for their machines. The second issue is animal feed. That's up about 9% over the last year. And diesel prices are also up about 47% over the last year. And also the issues with the avian flu. That's decimated farmers over the last year. That's been a crucial issue. They've had to kill a lot of egg-laying hens. Of the number, I think they've killed 58 million chickens, and 43 of them were egg-laying hens. So those are
43% of them were egg-laying hens, or 43 million of them were egg-laying hens.
43 million, according to the USDA. So yeah,
okay.
So that's been a crucial issue in the egg business.
I mean, it's quite shocking, but it does seem to me that eggs are a very, very good indicator of food prices in general, right? Because they're very much a staple along with things like bread or, I guess, flour stocks. So you've got eggs, bread, meats. These are things that are an integral part of everybody's diet. So what other food product prices would you say are breaking bad at present?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, look at all the food staples in your kitchen. Everything is up across the board. Flour's up 26%, coffee's up 15%, bread is up 16%, milk is 15%. Even lettuce, a head of lettuce is up 20% over the last year. So there's no escape. The only respite you're seeing is actually surprisingly in the beef and veal market. That's actually down about 5% over the past year. But according to many industry observers, they say that's not going to happen very much longer, because the reason why it's down is that farmers don't have enough water or feed to keep up with their cattle. So they're killing them off prematurely, and they're not growing enough back to keep up with the demand that could resuscitate in 2023 and 2024. So beef price could go back up. But overall, food inflation at home is up 12% over the last year, and that's not good for the average person.
So is the solution to follow Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum and eat the bugs?
You will eat the bugs, and that's why.
And you'll be happy, apparently, too, doing so.
Have your cockroach milk,
Well, yeah, I mean, that is a thing now. People might think you're kidding with that, but yeah, that is an actual thing, cockroach milk. And I consider myself a very brave and worldly man when it comes to certain foods, but cockroach milk just seems somewhat beyond the pale to me. Now, Andrew, let's discuss the broader economy for a moment. What smoke signals are you seeing?
Well, everything is deteriorating in the U.S. economy. I just had a conversation, of course, about the labor market. That's on the decline. All the latest numbers point to recession. At least the financial market, it's not cratering as it was a year ago. But I think you and I had a discussion offline before about this, and that the financial market is usually a good indicator of a recession because it bottoms out heading into a recession as opposed to keep cratering during a recession. So I think that's another aspect of what you could see over the coming year.
And is there any economic news that could be a bright spot on the horizon?
Uh, I don't think so. Nothing's really pointing to upward trends. You look at the latest IBD TIPP economic optimism index, and it shows that nobody is optimistic about the U.S. economy right now. That's still dreadful. The inflation data is coming out. That could probably revive some optimism in the broader economy. You saw the recent consumer inflation expectations index from the FRB, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and it showed that the consumers anticipate inflation going down to 5% by the end of the year, and then 3% over the next 3 years. So I guess that's one of the optimistic aspects you're seeing it. But of course, as you have discussed many times, in order to eradicate demand, in order to eradicate inflation, you're going to have to eradicate demand, which then of course leads to recession.
Yeah, and there's the idea that a recession would actually be a good thing in this situation, which seems a little hard to wrap one's head around. But could you explain why that might be a good result?
Yes, well, of course. It's not good for the average person to have a recession
Of
because
course.
then they lose their jobs, and then you have a stagflation environment where you have stagnating growth and still high elevated inflation, plus rising borrowing costs. But at the same time, the recession is the antidote to all of this malinvestment and all this money printing that has occurred over the last year that's led to so much waste and malinvestment across the entire U.S. economy. Help cleanse the system. But of course, unfortunately, the problem is that every time you have a recession, the government prevents it from trying to work its way through the system, whether it's through stimulus, whether it's through relief, or whether it's the Federal Reserve just injecting more liquidity into the system. So there's never actually a real recession that can help clean the economy from all this waste that's occurred over the many years.
It's just two negative growth quarters to flatten the curve. I think that's the new COVID economy downplaying system. Now,
Well, what's interesting is that the world it's not just U.S. Market analysts or U.S. data showing a recession. Just the other day, the World Bank published a report saying that the global economy was perilously close to a recession, and it said that U.S. growth would just be 0.5%. But of course, that's down from what they said before in their October estimate, which was 1.7%. So either way, you're either going to have a steep economic decline, or you're going to have stagnating growth of the Obama days. So I guess in a way, you're picking your poison of what's better for you.
and what's better for the average American? Let's take an average guy, a gal. They have a little bit of money in stocks and shares. They've almost paid off their house. They have a fairly regular income, which is obviously subject to market changes. What's the best outcome for that person?
Well, they're seeing this that person seems like they have a good life already, as long as they're living within their means and they're not spending lavishly. That they own their own home, is already paid off. My God, I envy that.
I said almost paid off, you know.
Well, it depends. Of course, if they have a 20-year mortgage rate and they have to refinance in a 5-year mark, then of course they're going to be paying higher mortgage rates, and they're still dealing with higher inflation. So, if they're trimming their bills and trying to live within their means, and their house is nearly paid off, and they're enjoying a fairly modest income, which let's say hypothetically the median income in the U.S. is about $57,000 a year. If they're earning around that, it's tough, but it's manageable to handle that. But it's not ideal just because of what the government's done to your purchasing power. But if you're investing in stocks right now, you're probably in a good position to buy the dip and build your positions because, as I said earlier, with the Federal Reserve expected to cut interest rates and the market perhaps reaching a bottom, you're going to start adding more to your assets, your asset values.
And that's what we'll be looking out for. Andrew Moran, thanks ever so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And that's about all we have time for on this week's edition of Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio America Network. I'd like to thank our guests, Scott D. Cosenza, Andrew Moran, and James Fight for taking the time to join us. And of course, extend my thanks to you, the listeners at home, for tuning in and joining us week in, week out. I'd like to leave you with just a simple quote from Mr. Noel Coward, who said, "It's discouraging to think how many people are shocked by honesty and how few by deceit. And I think that's quite applicable to the situation we find ourselves in. So many people are so prepared to accept that one person did wrong, the other person can do no wrong, based purely on their political standpoint. And I think that's something that we all need to look at within ourselves and perhaps apply a little critical thinking to those kind of opinions. Or perhaps if we all just understood what George Orwell wrote in Shooting an Elephant, when he said, he wears a mask and his face grows to fit it. Just something to think about. Thanks for listening. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Entertaining, informative, and just plain fun. Watch Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5. Produced by conservatives for conservatives. C5's The Left Free Zone. Hosted by Liberty Nation's Lisa K. Donner. Joined by a raucous, irreverent panel of authors. Deconstructing leftist narratives. Debating the hot topics. And remembering to laugh. Join the official conservative safe
You only
space.
did that to piss Jeff off.
Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5.